guys have probably seen her up in Spring, Texas, on the north side.
Guys, what we're going to do is go through some of the most controversial subjects that we can talk about. Number one is going to be oil. A lot of this stuff is near and dear to you because, you know, it's kind of like the old Chevrolet thing. When you bought a Chevrolet, you always have to have a Chevrolet. Boy, I think that fantasy's gone away now. You know, oils have kind of filled its spot. And if you use Valvoline, you use Valvoline for the rest of your life. A number of things have happened mandated by the federal government in January of '07. And this is very important to you, and I want you guys to listen to me real good. There was an additive pack put in all oils, whether it be petroleum-based or whether it be synthetics, called zinc dienophosphate. ZDDP is what it abbreviates to. Some people call it a friction modifier. It's not really a friction modifier. What it does is that it binds the oil molecules together so that they don't squeeze out under shear. And I'm going to talk to you about what shear is for just a minute, okay? Shear is where two severe forces try to come together, and they try to squeeze out the oil molecule between those two pieces of metal. Now, an engine that runs under oil pressure is supported by what they call hydropic lubrication. In other words, there's a pressure there that forces the oil molecules in and keeps them from getting squeezed out. It keeps that connecting rod from being pushed down in the crankshaft. That helps. But in the transmission, we don't have oil pumps. We got metal on metal. And the only thing that keeps the metal on metal opposed to one another is the oil molecule and how strong it is. And if we put enough shear forces on it, we can squeeze it out, and then we create metal-to-metal damage. Now, zinc dienophosphate acts as not so much a friction modifier, it acts as a binder. It acts like an adhesive to keep the oil molecules underneath those two forces that are going together. And picture an oil molecule as just a round spear, a real small microscopic spear, and it tries to squeeze them out. And when it squeezes them out and enough force takes place right there, you're going to have metal on metal. That's what zinc DDP did. And the federal government mandated to the oil manufacturers in January of '07 that they had to take out 95% of zinc DDP because it theoretically killed catalytic converters around 200,000 miles. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of. A car's got 200,000 miles on it, it's wore out, the engine's gone. But that's some of the stuff that's going on up there in the environmental protection agency. 95% of the zinc DDP is gone. So if you got an old 265 or 283 Chevrolet engine with a flat tappet camshaft, you can about expect it to last about 50 miles because it cannot control shear. If you put some of those oils into this manual transmission, you'll damage all the bearings or you'll damage all the gears because it doesn't have protection of shear. But there's one oil manufacturer that at least will tell me that they've been able to circumvent the law. Remember I said 95% of it had to come out? There's 5% out there that's still available. And Mobil is one manufacturer that still sells oil under this name. And I want you to etch this in your gray matter. You can go to Walmart and you can buy this stuff. And it's listed under high mileage. And everybody says, oh, high mileage, this is an old wore out engine. This has got chemicals in it to make the seals swell up so it doesn't leak. This is what your first thoughts are, okay? Not true. This has got 1,600 parts per million of zinc DDP like the oil used to have. What's in oil now is anywhere from 200 to 500 parts per million. So you can use this in an old 265, 283 Chevrolet. And this will also work because it's the same weight as ATF in your manual transmissions. Be careful what you put in these transmissions because we have a situation in here called fiberides. These are your synchronizers that have got a clutch type material, and this is the synchronizer. These used to be brass, but these have got a fiberide material or a clutch type material on the inside. Now, there's a lot of oils out there that are sold by like Royal Purple called synthetic transmission oils. And basically there's still ATF, which is automatic transmission fluid, and companies like Royal Purple just go add a little bit of their purple dye to it, and it's still an automatic transmission fluid. Now, Why did we use ATF in the assembly plant on all of our SRT4s? Because it was cost effective. Simple as that. Because here's why. One out of about every 500 cars coming down the assembly line was either an SRT4 or a manual transmission neon. And those have to be filled from a pit down in the floor. It required special equipment. It required a $60 an hour technician who's union to sit down there and sleep for 499 cars, okay? And when the 500th car came by, he took the plug out and put special manual transmission fluid in it. So the engineer sat down and said, my God, we got all these Environmental Protection Agency regulations that we have to deal with. We've got a guy that's making $60 an hour that's sitting on his butt down there for an hour and a half. And we have to deal with all these environmental regulations. Why can't we put ATF in everything? Because these are just street cars. You know, if they're going to go race these things or performance enhance them, maybe they'll have enough sense to take the ATF out. And that's what happened. They let these things go out with ATF in them. ATF is designed for automatic transmissions. It works fine with these fiberites because this is a clutch type material in it, okay? But it doesn't work in a performance application. You cannot use ATF and a T850 transmission with any kind of performance enhancement that you may have done to it. Because what you will create is shear. Because it has no zinc DDP in it, period. It is designed to make the clutch smooth inside of an automatic transmission. So if you guys got that stuff in there, you need to get it out. Now there was another issue that occurred in 04, and I'm talking about in-house doctrine right now, okay? There's a little bit of a difference between the 03, the 04, 05 SRT4, basically in the transmission. The 03 had a little bit different manufactured transmission. The guts in it were a little bit different. It did not have bearings around each one of the gears. It had no bearings. It was a gear on a shaft. And it did not have a quaife. Okay? Those of you that got 03s, they don't have quaifs. They're just an open differential. And also, none of the gears had bearings under them. And what the bearing looks like is this. It's a cage needle bearing. This supports the gear on the shaft to keep it from localizedly heating when you do third gear burnouts. If you do third gear burnouts with an 03 transmission, you're going to seize the gear to the shaft because it can't handle the loading. But on an 04, 05, it can handle that. Okay? Now the 03 does have some advantages. But there was an issue that came up in the early 04 launch. There was some reports from the field that there was some chattering from the quaifs. That's a little unusual because a quaif is not a clutch type shear grip. It's a Torrenson type. It's got Torrenson gears inside it. It's got gears that rotate opposite directions to one another to create a shear grip action. But the phone call from the field went into the wrong SRT4 engineer. It went into one of the rear wheel drive guys. And most rear-wheel drives that have a positive shear grip in the differential, the clutches back there are clutches like that would be in the transmission. So he instructs the plant, which was New Process Gear up in Albany, New York, to put 3 ounces to 4 ounces of friction modifier in every transmission that left the assembly plant in 04. Okay? Now, think about something for a minute. Any of you guys have had pickup trucks with a shear grip or posit traction or limited slip or whatever, when it starts making that silly ass noise back there and chattering, yeah, you know what I'm talking about if you had one of them. You go to the owner's manual, it says, oh, put more friction modifier in it or change the oil at 30,000 miles. Now think about something for a minute. Those of you that are mechanical, what the hell's in a differential? A ring gear and a pinion. That's basically, you got side gears and spiders, but they don't turn very often unless you're going around a corner. So you got just 2 sources of heat. But in 30,000 miles, they want the fluid replaced. Why? Because friction modifier is organically made. It's organic. It's like vegetable oil. And when it goes through a number of thermal cycles, it starts degrading or it starts rotting. You ever smell the stuff when you take one of the covers off of a diff? You say, what the hell's that smell? That's the oil that's rotting. And that's what's taking place inside our transmissions. We not only have 2 gears, which they have a ring and a pinion in a differential, we got 5 forward, several reverse, and all kinds of idler gears. I mean, my God, right here we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 gears in just the output shaft. And on the input shaft, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gears on it. So we got all these gears that are running into one another, creating heat. And we're going through thermal cycling. What do I mean by thermal cycling? And it's worse for the guys that live up in Yankee Land, where they start up a car and it's 10 degrees below zero.